Hello, good morning and welcome on in. It is so great to connect with you again today. Today I wanted to talk about the perils of the modern woman or the current day woman and the demands and I suppose the scenario of where the current day woman finds herself. And so let's have a look at that scenario. Let's see if you identify. If you do, place a love heart or a like below, because I'm sure that the scenario that I'm giving is not just about one person. It's not just limited to one person. But let me give you probably a typical scenario or a typical story. Let's call it a story of what I see regularly in clinic. So let's talk about this working woman. I'm going to call her Alice. And Alice is juggling work. She's juggling some home responsibilities. She's juggling her family life. And Alice finds that she works all day through the day. She works hard at her job. She takes a lot of pride in what she does for her job, for her work. And when she comes home from work, she finds that she then takes on her second role, or it's not even a second role, it's her other role. And it's the other role of being the home domestic, the wife, the mum, the caregiver, the household duty tasks. All of these other roles start when she comes home from work. And she continues these household tasks until she falls asleep in bed at night exhausted. So she's been working all through the day and then works through the evening on her let's call it her second job, until she falls into bed exhausted. Even though she's exhausted, she's still thinking about what's the tasks for tomorrow? What do I need to do tomorrow? What do I need to accomplish tomorrow? And her head is swimming with her to-do list. And the next day she wakes up. But she wakes up feeling tired and unrefreshed. She doesn't feel like she's slept well. She doesn't feel like she's ready to jump out of bed and start the day. She feels like it's Groundhog Day. But she gets up, she motivates herself, she gets going, she pushes herself through the day, but feeling very robotic. Feeling like she's just being almost like a robot on autopilot to get through each and every day. And when she is at work or even when she's at home, she doesn't feel like she's as productive as she used to be or as she should be. I mean, don't get me wrong, Alice gets the tasks done. She gets through her day, and anyone else looking at her from the outside will say she's productive, she's efficient, she gets things done. But inside, she doesn't feel like she accomplishes her tasks adequately. She feels like she's letting herself and her team and her family members down. Her brain feels foggy and it feels full. And it feels like she can't take on much more or retain anything else. And Alice is concerned about this tendency that she gets through halfway through a sentence and forgets what she was talking about, forgets what the point is. Or she's walked into a room thinking about what she's going to accomplish, the next 5 tasks that she's going to do. Walks into a room, gets into the room, looks around and goes, why am I here? What did I come in here for? And then gets frustrated with herself because she couldn't remember what she was there for. And due to her exhaustion and the busyness of her life, she just doesn't feel like she wants to interact with anyone. She doesn't want to feel like she wants to interact with her friends, her family. She's starting to withdraw and isolate herself. And so she doesn't have that social butterfly or that want or need to have interactions with others as well. She feels hopeless and she feels alone. And she feels like she's the only one that's feeling this way. And Alice feels like her whole life is just revolving around this spinning door of her job, her work, her family life, and her household tasks. So she feels like she's on Groundhog Day. I don't know, can you identify with this? It does seem to be a bit of a typical scenario that I do see in my clinic of many people. But what I'm going to ask you is, could this be an example of how you're feeling? Could it be an example of me? Or could it be an example of your loved ones? Or all of the above? because it is quite a common scenario in the modern day or the current day woman, especially with the extra load that I suppose the current pandemic has created with homeschooling, with changes in schooling, changes in dynamics of the house, changes of workload, of being the working from home mum on top of the looking after the kids mum. Now, we could label this scenario as being exhaustion, burnout, adrenal fatigue syndrome. We could label it as one of those. But the problem is that the woman that is experiencing this keeps on going. She keeps soldiering on. She keeps going each day unaware of what this scenario or this situation is doing to her physically, mentally and emotionally. And it does lead to burnout in a lot of people. And particularly the level of burnout and the level of exhaustion is skyrocketing and will skyrocket dramatically considering what's been going on for the last 2.5 years. So it's very important now more than ever to be aware of this situation. If you're finding yourself in this situation, being aware of it, being aware of what's going on, of how you're feeling. Because that's the first step to breaking this cycle and to being able to get yourself out of this cycle of exhaustion, of burnout. So step one is the awareness, and that's the only way that we can break the cycle and see that there's a need for change. And step two with this scenario is to identify what habits, what triggers in your life contributed to what's happening at the moment. Is it your stress load? Is it personality traits like being a perfectionist or being a people pleaser or being unable to set boundaries and say no to extra tasks, extra things come on? Is it your own internal driving force to be the superwoman that many women are now projected as being? We all try to strive for this superwoman status, that we've got this superwoman cape on, and we can go through life juggling all of these aspects of our life with ease as the superwoman cape. But sometimes it is about identifying that we're not all superwomen and we don't have to be superwoman, and it is a bit of a habit or a trait or a internal motivation to push ourselves that gets us to this scenario. And to change this scenario, step number 3 is to develop strategies for stress management. So once you've identified the stresses and the triggers in your life, it's about creating a management plan around that. How to manage the stress, how to manage the workplace demands, how to manage your to-do lists, your workload, and develop strategies that can help you. It's not even the word succeed I'm looking for, but to help you flow through these processes and maybe even lighten the load. So it's about getting strategies to reduce or to manage the situation. Maybe even strategies to identify what is important and what's not. Is the current task, or is the number of tasks on your list of to-do lists today, will it matter in 2 weeks, 5 weeks, a year, 2 years, 5 years? If not, maybe it's not an important to do task, that you could minimize your tasks and work smarter with that. And step 4 is also speaking to your family members about how you're feeling about the current situation, speaking to your boss, speaking to work colleagues, and working together to devise a plan or to devise a strategy so that you don't have this overwhelming perpetual Groundhog Day going on, juggling everything, but setting a few more boundaries and speaking to those around you to help you with those boundaries. And step 5, and this probably is the most important one in my opinion, but it is about developing new habits. But it's all good and well for me to say, hey, let's get some new habits, let's put something into play. But if you're already feeling overwhelmed and you're already feeling like you're struggling, and I go and say, okay, do X, Y, and Z right now, you're going to go, I can't do it. So let's look at new habits, but developing them one at a time, making very small changes that will have a bigger bigger ripple effect. So some of those new habits could be meal planning, prepping your meals, increasing the meals that you're having, so that increasing the size of the meals that you're making so that you've got less time in the kitchen and more meals. So I double batch a lot of my meals so that I can freeze half of it for another night. So I call it what I cook once, eat twice. Set times for your tasks. Things like email, text messages, social media, they tend to zap a lot of our time, and it infiltrates into our personal time. So I get quite a lot of clients that tend to start to go to sleep later because they're on their phone checking their messages, their social media, their emails, and don't realize that an hour's gone by before they get to go to sleep. And then their mind's racing. So scheduling things like emails, text messages, phone calls, social media to a set time, and have it a finite time, that an alarm goes off at the end of a finite time, and that's the amount of time that you spend on that, so that you're not getting absorbed into the constantness of technology that we have at this stage. Enlisting family members to help you with some of those tasks. So when you do speak to family members about how you're feeling, what's going on, the scenario that's happening, even enlisting some of your family members, your kids, to help with some of the tasks, to delegate some of these roles to other people. And maybe even speaking to your boss that if your workload is quite large, that is there a way that it can be spread out with other workers, or could you get some help along the way? And prioritizing those tasks. So if you have a task that if you've got a list of tasks, you've got a to-do list, and it's say it's something like this, a list this big, then having it that you prioritize and you allocate only 3 tasks for the day, that you don't overwhelm yourself. And again, it's about looking at some of those tasks. Will they matter in a year's time if you don't get something done, or is it something that's quite important and needs to be addressed first? And when you address that, some of the other tasks go by the wayside. So looking at prioritizing those tasks and only allocating the tasks that are achievable and not overwhelming the plate. And then being aware of the tendencies or personality traits that tend to drive you to perfectionism, to not being able to say no, or not being able to set clear boundaries. And so these are some of the habits, but putting them in one at a time, making one small change at a time. I always find things like prioritizing task lists, meal planning as being the easier ones to set up first, or even allocating time for emails and social media. They're easier to start as a task, and I find that they open up a little bit more time to be able to tackle some of the bigger sections as well. So getting these tasks one at a time, and just starting with something small and moving forward and making it achievable. But if you're looking for some support, I'd love to be able to help. I've just this year we set up a support group called the Fatigued, Exhausted and Burnt Out Women Transformation Group. And if you're looking for some help, looking to identify with others that are feeling the same way, with that scenario that I gave you at the beginning, if you're identifying with that and you're wanting some help, or wanting just to connect together with others that are feeling the same way, this support group, this Facebook group is one of the ways that you can go with that and find some tips, some support, and the tribe that can help you identify with how you're feeling and move forward from where you're at. So that support group is there for you as well. But also this year, part of my initiative to help others in this scenario, feeling exhausted, feeling run down, feeling burnt out, I am doing information and meditation nights. Now, the first one for this year is on the 31st of January. It is at 7 o'clock at night, and it is an interactive information night. So there's some information that we go through just to help with some strategies, some tips, another way of looking at things. And then the second half of it is we do an interactive meditation, hypnosis, just to help move through some of the restrictions that you're feeling and help you to feel more relaxed and more in control of your life. So I'd love to see you there. I'll put the link in below and please join up. It is a free evening and I would love to see you there. I look forward to seeing you next time, and I look forward to hearing you break the cycle of feeling like the perils of the modern day or the current day woman. I'm Teresa Todd, transformational naturopath, biochemist and microbiologist, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.